Welcome to another live stream, everybody. Bitcoin still looking pretty darn good in my opinion. There are a few red flags that I want to talk about. I know I love to rain on the party sometimes lately. I just really want to be the voice of reason when FOMO kicks in because there's a few things concerning me with Bitcoin currently. One is that everybody thinks that we are 100% going to break 100K any day now. And don't get me wrong, I agree with that. I really do think it's only a matter of time until that happens. But the fact that everybody's so sure that it's happening right away, it's just we don't know when it is going to happen for sure. And I mean, even when we were trading in this range way back here, I mean, a lot of you guys will remember this painful range. We broke some 4-hour structure here. And we actually trended to the downside for 8 months after this very micro structure break here. But we had this climbing structure. So we were just setting a series of higher highs and higher lows. And basically, this was the last one. We did technically get slightly higher than this. And this is one thing for those of you new to my streams here. I love micro analyzing. I'm looking at structure very zoomed in kind of a thing. And that's exactly what this is. But we did break slightly higher, so I'm considering this our high, this our higher high. Lowest point between the two is my confirmed higher low. Once that structure broke, and for a lot of you guys, this is going to be quite familiar. But that's where I started pulling my STUBER FIBS. You'll see a lot of people in the group across the Discord talking about STUBER FIBS. It's a strategy that I created within the last year or so. But basically looking for a change in structure like that, followed by a Fibonacci pull to the 786, 886 fib pocket. And basically, yeah, you can see it happening there. Then we end up having this new low here. What happens after we end up breaking that low? We set a new lower low, right? So the highest point between our low and our lower low here ends up being, here, let me just make this more clear. So we have our low here, we break that lower low, highest point between the two is right here. So that's my lower high on that immediate trend. So I pulled my Fibonacci from there to our new lower low. We never actually ended up getting all the way back up there. Continuing the trend, or where was it? I think it was down here, where we ended up setting a couple of them, I know for sure. Yeah, there was another one, got a nice rejection off of 786. I think it was actually this bigger one I was looking at, though. Here, let me just remove a few things. Actually, screw it. Just to save time, I'm just going to do it here. But basically, after we got this structure break, then we get a new one, right? So let's pull our fib from here to our new lower low. We end up getting rejected right in that 786, 886 fib pocket. We end up getting a harsh rejection. From there, we set a new lower low here. We pull a fib from the highest point between this low and this lower low. Notice where we end up getting rejected again, 786, 886 fib pocket right there. Even though at the end, eventually a trend will break, right? But just notice that we did end up still getting some significant pullbacks at that resistance level just below the 786 here, right in the fib pocket there. Yes, they were short-lived, but you can see they obviously reached some of my Fibonacci targets and played out as beautiful trades anyways. But what I'm getting at basically is the structure that we have in the chart right now is very similar to what happened back here. And although I'm not saying it has to happen again, just understand that when a structure breaks like that, you can end up in a very serious shift in trend basically. So here we had this downtrend from let's actually go over to the daily chart just so it's easier to count here. But how long did that downtrend actually end up lasting until we broke was, well, 240 days basically. I think approximately 8 months or something like that. And just notice that basically, I want to go back here. All these yellow lines are kind of the same thing, right? As we had this uptrend here, I know this looks like a lot right now. But basically, anytime we broke our previous high, we end up confirming our higher low. So here, higher high, this is our higher low. We end up breaking this high here, confirming that this is now our higher low because that's the lowest point between our high and our higher high. And we just kept doing that, right? Just kept setting higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, etc., etc. And that's just every very micro analyzed higher low on this trend. until right here. Just a few days ago, this trend actually broke right here, where this was that microanalyzed higher low, confirmed higher low, because we did trade a little bit higher. We end up breaking that. And then actually, what's interesting, sorry, I'm going to just delete all this because it's a lot on the charts. But notice that after we end up getting this structure break here, what ends up happening? If we pull a fib from there down to where we bottomed out at the time, notice where we get rejected. Pinpoint accurate on the 786. So now is kind of one of those times where, you know, that's the first time that's happened since, I believe it was October 23rd is when this trend started to the upside, basically. And so to see that, you know, this was about 4 weeks of never losing a higher low on the 4 hour, and now we actually did here with this trend. Just something to be a little bit cautious of, that, you know, after trending to the upside for so long, and then to see that actually happen where we break that structure, retest the 786 perfectly like that for a nice little lower high. Just something that's a little bit concerning, right? I'm just getting a little background noise from somebody. Not sure whose mic I'm picking up here, but looks like it's been dealt with. Thank you. But then ever since even then, so we set that low, tested that 786, and then look what happened again. Look where we ended up getting rejected again, pulling from that new lower high down to our new lower low, and then testing that 786. The thing is, you know, it looks like we're trying to find support nicely. I will say that right now, you know, Bitcoin's acting quite nicely. And as far as a STUBER fib setup goes, if someone were taking that short on that STUBER fib, the first target would have been hit already. So it's totally natural. You know, if the price wants to reverse from here, so be it. It could absolutely happen. The thing is, we've broke some structure now, right? Like we broke this, set our lower low, broke that, set another lower low, lower low, lower low, etc. So this is basically where our structure changed once again, right? Because let me just remove these drawings. So basically this was our last low and then lowest low, right? So the highest point between the two is right here. And honestly, even if you wanted to ignore this and say, oh, that's too micro-analyzing for me, okay, whatever. You know, we started this little range here, and same thing, right? We've broke this resistance as well. So kind of looking at the same thing there. So the fact that we had this downtrend and we have broke that, I mean, yes, that's showing a little bit of strength, but just understand that, you know, I like to look at the range first, and then if the range breaks, then we can talk about new all-time highs and that sort of thing. But technically, you know, we're just stuck in this range now, for now anyways, because this is where the structure changed to bearish, and then here the structure changed to bullish. So if I'm just pulling the range, where we could expect to possibly find resistance is we do still have this STUBER fib up here, and this would basically range from 97.9 up to 98.9, and then obviously all-time highs right around 99.9, or basically 100k. So it's just that markets don't like to go in just one direction, right? It would make total sense that we bounce around a little bit. I'm not so sure we're just going to blast through this our first try. And that is not to say that I'm bearish, you guys. I am not saying that this is, you know, definitely the end of the bull market or anything like that. I personally don't think so. I think there's a lot of time left. Happy to be wrong. I'll trade the downside if we start a bear market early, whatever. I just personally don't think we're there. But I'm open to the idea of bouncing around in larger ranges, right? So one thing I pointed out in the Pro Signals chat last night, actually, that I do want to talk about as a potential short setup to look for moving ahead. So this is basically how I approach looking at a trade, and this would be more of a swing trade, right? Because it is a 4-hour chart. But basically, so one, obviously the STUBER fibs. That's why I have this red box here, 786 to 886, potential resistance there. The market loves respecting those levels, especially the first test. Obviously it can blast right through, but whatever, right? It's a nice tight stop, tight invalidation. We break the highs and basically whatever, goodbye, sayonara. But one thing going along with this is, I know not everybody likes trading diagonal trend lines. I personally don't mind. There's certain ways that I'll trade them. I won't set blind orders on them or anything like that, but I like to use exact wick touch points. I like to have at least 3 before a breakout to consider it a valid breakout. So just looking at this right now, just going from our all-time highs here, just going to connect to this wick right here and just extending that. And now what I'm going to do, lock that in place. I am also going to add an alert to annoy me every single minute, just so that I can then look at the chart, see what's actually happening, because I'm not just setting a blind short at this level, but what I do like is that this diagonal trend line does line up very closely with that 4-hour Stuber fib rejection. So I want to see what the chart does from here. If we end up testing this level, that's when my phone's going to notify me, and then I can really zoom in, because I do like trading the shorter time frames, but I'm still willing to look at the larger time frame just to see kind of what's going on. And basically what I do, if my phone notifies me that line has been touched, I'm going to zoom into the 5-minute, the 1-minute, stuff like that. And basically, if it's a third touch point, perfect rejection, you know, I'll consider taking a short. What I'd be more interested in seeing for a short would be basically we just wick above very slightly, but then come back down, not even closing candles above, just kind of wick right back down. So that's where I'd love to see on the 1 minute we get above that third touch point resistance kind of a thing. But since it's just the third touch point, we don't already have 3 exact touch points. That's where I'm going to consider it, you know, the possibility that it's a fake out, because it hasn't been really confirmed to me, because it doesn't have 3 exact touch points. So if I see the 1 minute just wick above, kind of tests into this fib box and, you know, end up losing this resistance once again, I would be just basically looking to short the retest. I think that's a beautiful trade setup if it ends up coming. Again, I am not setting a blind limit order. I want to see how that level is reacted with. I want to see if it reaches into this fib pocket. But yeah, if we kind of get above this resistance on our third attempt here and then end up losing it right away, I'm going to consider that a bit of a fake out, swing fail, whatever. I know a lot of people like trading swing fails, and I basically treat them the same on diagonal trend lines, just like I do on horizontal, right? I'm just looking for kind of that liquidity grab above and then shorting the retest of it if it ends up happening. It's just something looking into the future. That being said, we start pulling back before that happens. You know, at this point, I would be considering longing this support down here, because since, like I said, we did technically get a bullish break out of this little range down here. So basically what I'd be looking for, you know, if we do end up pulling to the downside, I would like to see us find some support basically down at these levels, kind of 92.1 down to 91.5 basically. I would love to see a higher low, basically a higher low pivot in that range. I think that would be absolutely beautiful to end up getting that kind of a long opportunity, especially if, you know, if the RSI had a nice bullish divergence, for example. Currently right now, it doesn't actually have the type of divergence that I would love to see. Very specific divergences that I look for on the RSI. St. Mer, you're definitely familiar with them. Basically, I look for something like this. I would love to see a double bottom or a Stuber fib or whatever, but have the RSI doing something like this, basically. Going from extreme overextended conditions and then getting the bullish divergence back into regular territory, kind of at a double bottom level. That's what I really love to see with the RSI. That's basically one of my favorite RSI trade setup confluences that I like looking for. But you know what? It doesn't really look like we would get that, just because the RSI never did get that oversold on this last bottom here. So, but either way, still, I would be interested in looking at shorter time frames, just finding some sort of 1 minute or 5 minute lower high structure break to the upside, and just kind of confirm that hey, this level is looking like some sort of a support level. I would love to see that as well. So those are kind of the levels that I'm looking for, as far as more of a swing trade kind of approach. But you guys know that for the most part, I'm scalping shorter time frames anyways. Speaking of that, actually, before I zoom right in, also just want to look at the Trendmaster. The Trendmaster indicator is one of my favorite with the MDX Trendmaster, getting tongue-tied. MDX algo indicators. The Trendmaster is one of my favorite, and I'm more so, rather than just looking at each individual signal, and yes, this is the weekly, but you'll notice I also use it on the 1 minute, the 5 minute, etc. I really like to notice which way the signals are trending, more so than the signals themselves. Yes, the signals typically play out great on a longer time frame like a weekly like this, but more so specifically that they are trending to the upside. Like higher sell signal, well, a higher buy signal is most likely going to be very strong, right? But yeah, just zooming in, I want to check that on the 4 hour actually. What's the Trendmaster doing? Notice where we're finding support too is, you know, we lost this buy trend very briefly, but we did end up reclaiming it here, and you can see the bulls are trying to pump us up a little bit higher. So I really do feel like we're going to end up testing this resistance up here, you know, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, whatever. Obviously doesn't have to happen. I just have a gut feeling we're heading there. And if we do, that's where, like I said, I'm going to be notified, and from there I can kind of judge what's happening there. But yeah, obviously, again, just looking at the direction of these signals, right? Just look how beautiful this was as soon as these buy signals started trending to the upside. Right down here, we get our first higher buy signal on the 4 hour, and just look how beautiful of a reversal that ends up being. And then obviously, again, we end up setting a higher sell signal, higher buy signal, just showing again that the trend looks like it's ready to continue to the upside. And that's the same buy trend that we're still holding right now. So even if we got a sell signal, yeah, it would indicate that we might see a bit of a pullback, but I would be very interested to see if we got some sort of a higher buy signal. Then I think the trend would be looking juicy as well. So few things to watch out for there. Yeah, and just because I know, like I said, there's a lot of new faces around here. Here's an example of the Bitcoin long that I took earlier. Just a classic STUBER FIBS setup. So basically what I'm looking at, this green line here, notice what I was talking about basically on the structure earlier, right? Here we had a low, and we ended up setting a lower low. So these are the two lowest lows on this trend currently. I'm just going to make a red trend line because this is a bearish structure break, right? That means since this is my low and my lower low, the highest point between the two is my confirmed lower high on the trend. And notice we actually got a bullish break above this right here. And this is where a lot of people would have been flipping extremely bullish, FOMOing into longs and stuff like that. But that being said, it's very normal when you get a structure break to end up seeing some sort of a pullback, and that's where Fibonacci's come into play. So this right here was a bullish confirmation, but to pull back to these levels was still bullish. That's the thing, right? Breakout trading is risky, and when you wait for those pullbacks, that's basically why I love playing the STUBER FIBS, is just because, yes, I already have my confirmation I want to be long right here, but I'm not going to FOMO in. I'm waiting until, because I mean, invalidation of this, the break of the trend would be way down here, right? That's a huge loss to take if you are trying to play that breakout, unless obviously you can tighten up your stop loss, whatever. But as far as actual structure invalidation, that would be a massive, basically a massive move as far as a guy who likes looking at the 1 minute, right? That's a big range. Whereas, you know, if you get in here, like I always say, you know, basically the STUBER FIBS, that's where I start a position, is basically the 786. I like to ladder in, so I'm laddering in positions basically throughout this pocket and down towards the bottom. So in this case, I ended up getting my 786 and my 886 entry. So my average entry ended up being right in the middle of the fib pocket basically. And that loss is significantly smaller if I would have got invalidated down here and the trend would have broke to the downside again. It would have been a lot smaller of a loss in that case, rather than getting into a long up here and getting stopped out at the same level, right? So every trade strategy has its losses. Basically, no trade strategy is going to be perfect, but it's very much so about being able to control those losses. And that's when you have Fibonacci's and stuff like that it can be so structured, and you can really help keep those losses manageable, basically. Because I mean, look at this. Obviously, two of my targets have been hit already, my 0.5 fib and my 0.214. For any of you guys who are new here, The 214 is basically the opposing 786, because if I was looking at a bearish 786, I'd be looking to short. In this case, since I'm in a long already, not really interested in shorting right now, but interested in taking profits. So if I pull the fib the opposite way, notice that the 214 and the 786 line up very closely. So that's just where that fib comes from. And just to kind of show you what I mean, if I would have ended up getting stopped out on this position, the risk reward, oh, whoopsies, there we go. Just notice that it's about a 3-to-1 risk reward, right? So a lot better than, let's say, getting into a long up here and getting stopped out way down here. That's a huge loss, right? So, and I always liked, and I talk about this every stream, I personally like to ladder into positions. I like to ladder out of positions. So in this case, I like taking a quarter of my profits at each of my fib levels. And from there, I like to leave half run, because if I can get into a running position, then fantastic. I think a lot of people, and the reason why a lot of people have a hard time trading the 1 minute, for example, is because everyone loves swinging at home run trades. And I'm sorry, but when you enter a position on a 1 minute setup, you just have to remember to pay yourself as well, right? So that's where, basically what I said earlier, playing the range first and then hoping for a breakout after that, sort of a thing. So in this case, yes, 2 of my take profits have been hit. And from there, yeah, hopefully it breaks out, right? If not, whatever, doesn't matter. It's risk-free at this point. All that I can do at this point is lock in a little bit more, so whatever. Doge, I also ended up taking a little bit of a long position. Actually, barely in a profit right now, so it's very similar to where I entered. 40. Oops. Let me just get this on here so I can babysit it a little bit. And basically my reasoning for that, like I was talking about with trend lines earlier, that this trend line, although yes, it's diagonal, yes, it's a 1 minute chart, but you know what? It does have 1, 2, 3 perfect touch points before breaking out. And on top of that, just bringing up the trend master, we obviously have upward trending buy signals as well. So I was also looking for a reason there to go long as well. Yes, I could have got in earlier, but I never ended up spotting it earlier. So whatever, it is what it is. Took a little bit of a long there earlier. So yeah, that's basically what led me to take that. So we'll see how those go. Sorry, let me just catch up on the comments a little bit. Like I said, if you have altcoin requests, I see it looks like we might have one here. Yeah, Doge is an interesting one with, obviously Elon backing the shit out of it, especially now that he is basically in office. I just feel like there's not really much standing in its way right now. So that's been one of the coins that I've been spot accumulating as well on dips. 2 of my favorites that I've been adding to recently have been Doge. Swarm is another one. Trio, this is one that a lot of you guys are familiar with. This one's been performing well. Very small market cap. Just understand, guys, when you're looking at coins that have very small market caps, I personally would avoid using market orders. I always use limit orders because generally the volume's very small and you don't want to accidentally cause a bunch of slippage on yourself. But this one, a lot of people in our group are very bullish on, and for a lot of good reasons. I'm not going to go into fundamentals because I'm more of a charts guy. But just notice on the 4 hour here, same thing, trend master indicator, we got a series of higher buy signals. That's currently where we're trying to find support here. And even if we do lose this buy trend here, that doesn't mean it would just, first of all, it would be a higher sell signal. And I would love to see a pullback coming to these STUBER fibs down here. And notice that this is actually very neat, you guys, especially for those of you who are new here. Now, this isn't going to happen every time. It doesn't always lay them out the exact same way I do. But with the ALGO master indicator, basically the only thing I have up on it right now is the FIBS. and notice there is an automatic STUBER FIBS setting. I changed my colors a little bit just so that they grab my attention. But yeah, that's basically exactly how I would be pulling a STUBER fib right now, from this higher low to this higher high. And I'd be looking for basically a pullback to this fib pocket here. Really, as long as we hold this higher low here, I think it's in a very good position. So anywhere above $2, I think it looks great. So at this point, I mean, I've been accumulating this for a little while now, slowly. And yeah, if we end up dropping support here, this is basically where I'm going to be looking at spot buying some more. Just again, a typical STUBER fib type of setup. And like I said, with the indicators trending to the upside, and this is a 4-hour chart, yeah, I don't even think you can trade it with leverage, but I'm more so just going for a spot coin approach. For the most part with altcoins, I rarely trade altcoins with leverage, to be honest. But yeah, as far as spot goes, those are a couple that I'm looking at. Fartcoin. If I would like an altcoin, shout. Had a lot of success trading this on the 5-minute and 7-minute over the last week. Does some huge moves using the Wave Master, but new to scalping, and had some inconsistencies. I'd love to see how you would go about trading it. For example, 1 minute also fine. Fartcoin. What is that on, like a centralized exchange or only DEXs? Just let me know what exchange and whatnot to look at as well. I will check out ADA in a little bit. Old Cardano, haven't looked at that in a while. Be known as the Cardano guy very soon. Hey, that's fair. You know, one of my biggest regrets is the bag of ADA that I paper handsed out of years ago. When would that have been? The 2018 bear market bottom, basically. Got rid of my ADA for next to nothing, and it would have been worth a lot, unfortunately. Just actually notice right now where Bitcoin is having a hard time. Sorry, before I hop onto some of those altcoins, I just want to show, here's a perfect example of basically where this downtrend would have started here. So basically we ended up losing support right here. And then if we just look at that as the top of our range, just notice where we're starting to struggle a little bit now. Filled that fib pocket absolutely perfectly. I'm not as interested in shorting this, although yes, there's absolutely a good possibility we see some sort of a rejection here, at least to my take profits. However, it's the reason I don't like that one all too much is, for one, no, we don't have a higher buy yet. But the fact that this is a higher low, right? I would have felt very different about this if, let's say, this low here went a little bit lower, just confirming that lower low. I would have been very much so looking at this as a STUBER fib worth shorting. But just since we never got that structure break and we're still holding the higher low, I'm not so sure we get much of a pullback from this. Yeah, I'm absolutely happy that I ended up, taking some of my profits off of my long. Just shy of the 214. But yeah, just not overly interested in the short right now. It's so tempting. I mean, whenever I see those levels, I love swinging at them, but especially that I'm here bouncing around between altcoins and stuff. I'm not really comfortable opening up a new one there. Do I use leverage when scalping the 1 minute, 5 minute, etc.? Yes. You will see over the weeks and months that I love trading on usually 25x or 69x. Total degenerate. But the thing is, it doesn't really matter, to be honest, when you're comfortable, because basically if I'm using, let's say, 69x just as a goof, or let's say people using 100x, as long as your margin amount is reasonable, then it doesn't matter all that much. Yes, I don't really recommend people to be using high leverage until they at least understand and have played around with it a bunch and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter all too much as long as you understand your position signing or sizing rather. Yeah, let me just hop into some real trash here. Fart coin. Let's get, speaking of being degens here. And you were talking the 1 minute or the 5 minute? Holy smokes. I know this is the 4 hour, but whoa, almost a 20x there. Okay, 5 minute. Let's check it out. I just want to start with a naked chart, and I'll just basically start analyzing what I see. First, I'll start with some basic trend lines. Again, when it comes to trend lines, when I'm looking for patterns and shapes and stuff, I just really have to clarify that I do not set blind orders on these. Like, I would not blind order along off this level just off that alone. However, if we ended up seeing some kind of something like this and reclaiming it right away, that's more so what I'm looking for on those trend lines. That or a perfect third touch point and then a break and retest kind of a thing. That's more so what I'm looking for with those. What is the trend master saying? Still might technically be trending to the downside on the 5 minute. What can I see for fibs here? I mean, I guess technically with this structure break here, we could look at, since that would be the higher low in that case, right? High, higher, high, lowest point between the two right there. And notice that fib pocket lines up pretty well with that support here. So there is a potential long setup there. One thing, what would be perfect actually, in my opinion, would be wicking to the 886, but then reclaiming that trend line. I think then you'd at least have the STUBER fib lining up with swing fail of that support trend line. I think that could be juicy. But that being said, something I do want to just bring a little bit of caution with that is this high here did not break this high back here, obviously. So just understand that we're looking at playing a smaller range inside a bigger range. So that just adds a little bit of risk, right? So, if this high back here would have ended up breaking here, then I would have been pulling a bullish STUBER fib, something like, in that case, if it happened, right? I would have been looking at something like that. But yeah, obviously that didn't happen. So just something to be a little bit cautious of. So if I zoom out a little bit further, technically this more so looks like our higher low. So if we end up dropping to the downside, I mean, we could start looking at something like this. Keep in mind, I never watch this chart. I don't watch how it typically acts or anything like that. But just as far as a typical STUBER fib, it just looks like, here we have our high, we break it, get our higher high. And actually, okay, this is something I also want to mention. And I know I mention it in lots of my streams, but I know there's a lot of new people here and that sort of thing. Something with the way I like to play fibs is I typically only like the first reaction off that STUBER fib, and that technically already happened back here, right? After this structure break, high, higher high, higher low, pull the fib. We ended up testing that 786 and we did hit the two targets already. So yes, it's possible that, yeah, it is still technically support, But I really like to go for that first mover advantage where, and it does make it a little tricky to catch those fibs sometimes because, yeah, I mean, especially if you're not familiar with them, sometimes you're going to catch them late. Like, honestly, what just happened to me, right? I was looking at that fib, but then I noticed that already has played out. That setup played out once. It got very close to playing out again. It never quite did get another 786 there. But like I said, that first reaction did already hit the first two take profits. So after that, it just becomes a little riskier because obviously as you're testing support more and more, you might just be chipping away at it and it may end up breaking eventually, right? So this fib is a little bit risky at this point. What I would really like to see would be, you know, breaking this high here. Let's just make this guy, let's make it red for now. Let's get rid of our diagonals here. Let's get rid of this. So we basically have our range. We have the top of the range, bottom of the range. Basically, this is the range that it's trading in right now, and until that breaks, nothing actually changes for me. So what I would love to see is we end up setting a new higher high. Actually, let me make it one of these. I would love to see us set a new higher high and then pull back, because at that point we would have a new STUBER fib, right? Actually, it wouldn't go that low, sorry, because in that case we would be moving our higher low up. Bloop. Moving it up because obviously this is our high, and if we set a higher high, this would be the lowest point between the two. So that would be my confirmed higher low, and that's where I'd be looking at pulling a Fibonacci from. So that would be a good setup to watch for, in my opinion. But yeah, obviously doesn't have to happen. It's just a way that I would like to look for trading STUBER fibs, basically. We could really microanalyze and say technically this downtrend has broken, right? Because if we're really going to microanalyze, we did technically set this low, lower low. We ended up breaking that. I'm very curious to see if this would find a very micro STUBER fib here. Very interested to see if that will happen. Well, I guess that is the 15-minute. Let's zoom in a little more. One minute. Yeah, could be a thing. I have no idea what the trading volume is on this or anything. I honestly, and I don't like to name names, but on this exchange, I have traded altcoins before, and I've had bad luck where even though my stop loss was in a profit, I've had positions get liquidated anyways. And yes, you heard that right. Going from a stop loss in a profit to a liquidated position. I don't trade cross, so it doesn't matter. I always use isolated leverage. So just the amount of margin I had on the trade ended up getting liquidated. And, you know, that's a bit of a blow when you're expecting, oh, worst case scenario, I'm going to take, you know, 10% profit here or whatever, and then you lose 100% instead. And that just happened because, you know, low trading volume and stuff like that, just getting hit with slippage. So that kind of put a sour taste in my mouth when it comes to trading altcoins. But that was with leverage. I don't know if you're trading leverage on something like this. I think this is just spot. And yes, I will check out ADA still, I promise. One sec. Yeah, no, when I use 69x, no, I'm not using cross leverage. It's just basically, like I said earlier, right, with the positions that I'm taking, Generally the stop loss is quite tight, especially the fact that I ladder into my positions. It's not like I'm entering at the 786 and that's basically where my loss, if we invalidate the lows, actually that's not the right tool, but basically like this, right? If we lose those lows, for one, that wouldn't have been liquidated, but I am laddering positions on the way down. So even if I would have hit my last entry down here, which I just missed, by the way, but that would have pulled my average entry even down a little bit further, closer to the 886. So usually I'm pretty picky with my entries when I end up taking high leverage trades, so that I'm usually not worried about getting liquidated. I would never be trading the 4 hour on 69x leverage, for example. I'm only looking for those tight invalidations on the 1 minute, for example, when I'm trading with that high of leverage. Honestly, most people should use low leverage. And honestly, I understand also that not everybody wants to trade the 1 minute, right? It's just the easiest way for me to show live examples, live structure, how I'm kind of looking at things. And it's what I like looking at. But the structure basically works the same, all time frames. Charts generally look the same. The 1 minute looks just like a 4 hour. It's just obviously it plays out a lot quicker. So yeah, structure basically the same. I understand trading the 1 minute leads to bad habits, over trading, revenge trading, over leveraging, all that sort of stuff that you should avoid. So just understand, play what works for you. Everybody's different. Honestly, I like playing the shorter time frames because I like knowing within basically a few minutes if my position's going to go in my favor or not. But a lot of people find it very stressful, whereas I find holding a position on a 4 hour, if I'm taking entries on a 4 hour, for example, I personally find that more stressful. So it all depends on the person. And as promised, I was going to look at ADA. Let's look at it on Binance. I just want to start zoomed out because, like I said, I really haven't looked at this in a long time, and I know it has been performing well. Yeah, last cycle it ended up getting up to over $3. Yeah, as far as this is great, the fact that actually here's another perfect example, right? As far as a STUBER fib goes, just notice that we obviously had this range resistance back here. We end up breaking that. And look what happens when we pull our fib from the lowest point of this range up to where we topped out. Look where we end up finding support, right in the middle of that 786, 886 Fibonacci, and absolutely blasted off from there. Where were you weeks ago when I needed to look this up? Absolutely moonshotting. So yeah, obviously there is some resistances up ahead. This is the weekly chart, so any one of these big pivot points, I mean, obviously potential resistance. As far as Fibonacci's, I mean, if we look something like that, could end up seeing all the way up towards 250 would be the 786, 277 would be the 886, and about 310 would be the all-time highs there. As far as looking for a blue sky breakout with fibs, I'm personally more of a Fibonacci retracements guy. I have not used the extensions a ton, but I would say, just as a couple, let's just say 1618, for example. If we end up breaking all-time highs, I mean, that would... If that's going to be the next target, that would be around $4.80, somewhere in there, even $4.88, somewhere in there. Again, I personally don't use fib extensions a ton, and nothing against them, nothing at all against them. I just don't want to tell you, oh, this is the target I would look for, because it's just, since I don't typically do that. I more so, my approach is more so my take profits. If I was in a long here, for example, I'd be looking at securing some profits in these areas here. Basically, anywhere in here, good profit taking if it ends up getting there. From there, I would keep some of my position open in case we end up staircasing. And let's say we get something like that, where we all of a sudden lose our market structure. That's more so where I'm going to consider that, hey, maybe that's a top or even a temporary top, right? I'd be more so, once we break out of the range, I'm more so looking for a structure change more than an actual target. And everybody's different with that, right? I will look at some shorter time frames as well. Let's hop right into, why not the 4 hour? So something that's interesting is this never really did lose a higher low. Like, I know a lot of people would say, oh, you know, we lost this level or we lost this level, whatever. Yes, true. However, this is more so the level that pushed us to our new highs. So I would actually be looking at this as our order block, kind of where we found support. And actually, that's exactly where we ended up finding a bottom so far. So that doesn't look so bad to me yet. I shouldn't say it like that. It doesn't look bad to me at all. Trendmaster, still just holding a beautiful buy trend as well. That wasn't... Well, yeah, basically a double bottom buy trend there. Absolutely beautiful signal there either way. 1 hour, what's the 1 hour saying? Higher buy signal on the 1 hour. So yeah, I mean, everything to me as far as Cardano goes, it looks pretty good to me. Even if we end up pulling back quite significantly, we do have this nice buy trend below us. And that's kind of the thing with the whole market, right? Basically with every coin, including Bitcoin, is everything's done a good job building support along the way. And even if we see these pullbacks, like, I'm just not all that worried. Yes, like I outlined at the start of the video, there is these red flags that technically, yeah, that's the first time in about 4 weeks that we've lost a higher low on the 4 hour. It is absolutely possible that that ends up sending us into a longer downtrend. Sure, you know what, for all I know, it could be a market top. I just personally don't think so. It's just, you know, when we get those structure breaks, I can't ignore them. That's just where I'm looking for these opportunities that, yeah, I absolutely, you know, we have this bearish move here. It's absolutely possible that we end up getting some sort of a bounce. It's possible we blast right through this resistance, but if we get a certain reaction along this trend line here, I will be looking at playing a short in that case. H-bar, I can definitely check out H-bar. I was actually thinking about that when I saw you hop in here. Yeah, kind of the same thing, right? Beautiful moonshot there. Ooh. Notice where we're struggling, though. Oops. I think you know where I'm going with this. Interesting. Something worth considering. I mean, that's the thing, right? There's always going to be some resistance along the way. It's not like I'm necessarily bearish on this kind of thing. It just makes sense that why we're struggling a little bit is just because the market loves respecting the 786, 886 fib pocket. Holy man, I have these lines drawn from way back. Let's take a look at a few things. Obviously the same thing here. It's crazy how much you see this happen, and you know, you're gonna want to look for this next. I know nobody wants to talk about it yet, but there will be another bear market someday. Just notice what happens when we have these long downtrends and we end up just basically creating a bunch of structure here. Notice that technically here we set another lower low, so let's just say we end up breaking this range here, and then look where we get an absolutely phenomenal entry. Once again, 786, 886 after that structure break. Basically where we bottomed out again, right? I mean, you can see that we basically flirted with support at these levels for quite some time. But just crazy how well those Fibonacci's play out when you get those structure breaks with them. Let's zoom in a little bit. It's kind of hard to do analysis when they're just trending this aggressively. Technically, I'm going to call, this a high, higher high, confirmed higher low. Let's just pull, well, actually, I can already tell with an eyeball. Look where we found support. So those of you who are new to the group here, you're probably starting to see why a lot of people talk about the STUBER fibs and, you know, look for them and that sort of thing, because when you really start to see them and you start to notice them with those structure breaks, you start to see them everywhere. And I always used to joke in my streams that, you know, I look at, you know, big ranges, small ranges, you see the STUBER fibs. I look at frickin' buildings outside and I see them two different heights. I see STUBER fibs. I look at trees that are different sizes. You see the STUBER fibs. You start to see them frickin' everywhere. So sorry for that when it happens. But yeah, very cool to see how often those fib levels get respected. And like I said, especially the first time you get that reaction rally out of it. The more times that it tests, the less I trust it. However, like I said, it's just... it's one of my favorite strategies, is looking for those fibs, because again, even if you're wrong, right? Like if you were buying, laddering in positions in that fib pocket, and let's say we do lose the lows, even if you set it below this one back here, you know, it's still a controlled loss compared to FOMOing in, you know, after we break these highs, just having, let's say, a trigger order to FOMO into a long if we break the highs, looking for that continuation. It would be a painful downtrend in that case. Whereas if you wait for that retest, yeah, unfortunately you don't always get it. That's trading. You don't always get the setup that you want, but very nice way to basically keep it structured, and that's what I need. I need. That's why I love Fibonacci's. I just love how structured they are. Yeah, smoke a lot of weed, see STUBER fibs. They're everywhere, and God, are they colorful. Here. There we go. That's better. Let's get all the colors in there. There we go. That's what I like to see. But yeah, that trend's looking nice. Holding this buy trend on the 4 hour. Obviously lost it very briefly, but it never flipped to a sell signal or anything. Just reclaimed it as support. Yeah, and that totally depends. You'll notice I don't have the 115 on my fibs right now. But yes, most often, just to give some wiggle room, I like to use the 115. When I do that, when I'm doing that approach, keeping a looser stop on a position like that, I like to leave some wiggle room past that. That's just a reminder, basically, to leave some wiggle room when you're looking at a trade, looking for invalidation. But the only reason I took it off is because there's I'm been experimenting a little more with the ALGO master, with the automatic STUBER fibs. And basically the way that it pulls them, it kind of pulls from the looks of it, most of the time, it basically pulls from the pivot points on the auto charting tools. And when I play fibs off those, actually I am curious, is that the one? Yeah, see? So pulled exactly where I figured it would. So when I'm, not the one that I just showed, the bigger range pulls, that's where it's looking, the indicator's looking for these pivot points basically. But in that case, when these pivot points get invalidated, then when I'm looking at those types of fib pulls, then I'm quicker to cut my loss, because they just, when those pivotal points lose their structure and they get invalidated, there's just I find that it's quite likely the trend continues that direction and keeps working against me, so I cut my losses quicker on those ones. When I'm looking at my own fib pulls and not so much using those pivot points on the auto charting tools, that's where I more so use that 115 as my invalidation. Kind of throwing a lot at you for any of you new people in the group. Like, I know this is not the setup that the indicator would be showing at this point. Very close, but it's from a different fib pull. But same thing, right? From this higher low point up to the higher high, basically. So the indicator also automatically pulling them, very similar to how I do. Sorry, just catching up on messages here. Oh, looks like already answered the 115 question. And yeah, obviously, guys, like, understand that everybody sees charts differently. We could have the same indicators, same trend lines, absolutely everything the same, and I guarantee we would trade this market completely different. So before you're trading with any real serious money or anything, obviously when you're testing new strategies or anything like that, use the replay feature on TradingView. Go back, do some back testing, see, write out a set of rules and just kind of journal what happens if you hit your take profits. If it didn't work out, was there anything you ignored? Just stuff like that, right? Just kind of finding some information to double check that you're looking at things right, and just playing strategies that your eye is able to adapt to and able to catch, right? Screenshot of my FIBS settings. I can sure. They might be kind of all over the place. Well, I mean, they'll just be exactly what you see on the chart, right? The numbers I use on my FIBS, I use the 1, which would be the full retrace, the 886, 786, that's your STUBER FIBS, the 0.5 and the 0.214, those are the take profits, and the 0 is obviously where you pull to. But again, do your own back testing, do your own research. Just because I like trading this strategy does not mean that it's for everybody. But very cool that some of the indicators can help as well. Like I said, the ALGO master indicator does have automatic STUBER FIBS. And yeah, they've been playing out quite nicely. I've only been playing around with this for about a week or so, but I love using it even if for just a second opinion, right? Am I looking at the Fibonacci's correctly? Oh, hey, the indicator shows the same ones. So at least, hey, you know what? If it was a failed trade, if it takes a loss, whatever, at least I can sleep knowing that, hey, you know what? It was a valid setup. Indicator was my second opinion. And obviously at the end of the day, it all comes down to myself when I'm pulling the trigger. And that's just why you have controlled losses when you take the losses, right? No trade setup is always going to work out. Doge is really hugging that resist support flip. Not sure how this one's going to go. It wasn't an actual STUBER fib setup. I was going more for a break of this trend line. It's nice to see that we still have the volume delta point of control just below us. So basically, as long as we kind of hold this 39.8 cents, I'm happy with it. If we drop that, I might just look for a re-entry lower. In that case, look for more of a STUBER fib, something like that. But yeah, Doge is one that I am interested in. Yeah, thanks so much for joining. Always nice seeing some new faces in here. Welcome to the team. Actually, speaking of that, guys, I guess we have been here for over an hour already. I think I am going to start wrapping up here. I am interested in this Bitcoin long. I'm going to ladder in some entries on the way down. Stop loss below the lows, but down here, just past the 115. But that's a long I'm willing to take a stab at. Unless we start, obviously, if structure changes, you know, all of a sudden we start getting bearish pulls instead, you know, I might start flipping my opinion in that way. Also, and that's another thing to understand, you guys. Actually, just let me get an order ready just in case. But that's another thing to understand, is that quite often when I am looking at the 1 minute and stuff, sometimes I'll be sharing things on the 1 minute, sometimes just talking about what I'm going to look for in the evening, like right now, what I'm looking for moving forward, kind of a thing. Understand that 1 minute structure can change very quickly. And if all of a sudden, you know, we get a bounce, like let's say we do get that entry that I want, I get a couple orders in, we end up bouncing, and then we start staircasing a little bit, but we very quickly end up losing that structure. Something like this. In that case, I'm going to look at bailing on my position early, or at least downsizing it, taking some off the table, that sort of thing. But basically, when I'm entering a position, especially on the 1 minute chart, basically looking for reasons to start downsizing my position. Rather than being greedy, more so just looking for reasons to downsize the risk, pay myself, that sort of thing. Tell you about my new jumpsuit. Oh, you only saw the one. Yeah, I have a beautiful Hawaiian print pajamas, Under Armour, whatever. The other one's different. The other one's not a skin tight Under Armour thing. The other one's an actual snowsuit, but it's also bright and colorful. Yeah, I gotta set a couple orders here. So yeah, basically, I'm going to be looking for some sort of a pullback into this level, looking to play something like that. And again, same thing, like I was talking about earlier, I like to start taking my profits at these fibs, but I like to let some run just in case we just blast right through. It's not so much that I'm always taking entries on the 786. It's more so that's where I'm willing to start considering the pullback maybe finished and looking for that, looking to get into a position. So if we don't come down here, well, that's just how it goes sometimes. There might be all of a sudden we print a higher low here or something like that with the auto charting tools, and then I can start looking for new setups up a little bit higher, right? It totally depends what happens with the structure, that sort of thing. But anyways, legends, I think that's about all I wanted to go over tonight. So those of you who are with me all the time and those of you who are new here, thank you guys all so much for being here with me. I always have a blast doing these streams with you. It's always nice to see different approaches, people looking at different things, and honestly it just helps me as far as, you know, talking about journaling trades and stuff like that. You know, being able to talk myself through my own emotions is actually quite helpful. So I love doing these with you guys. And like I was saying earlier, if you ever miss these streams or anything like that, I do share them on my own YouTube channel as well. StuTube Trading, all one word. I do share some stuff on my Twitter from time to time. But yeah, like I said, I do some of my own shorter videos, sometimes streaming on my own channel. But yeah, every Thursday evening, same time, I am here streaming as well. So hope to see you guys in the future as well. But with that, hopefully you guys found this useful. If there's anything you're unsure of or whatever, don't hesitate to, you know, tag me in some comments in the Discord or whatever, and I'll try to get to your questions ASAP. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you just, you know, even if it's just something random that I said that helped something with your own strategies click. Just I know the way I look at market structure and stuff. It was kind of, honestly, I was probably trading for 2 years, maybe even closer to 3. And when just some random person on a random video playing in the background on my third monitor just said something, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. And it was with like the confirming, waiting for the higher highs before you confirm the higher lows and etc. That just kind of changed the way I looked at charts, and it was just a way I'd never looked at it before. So hopefully someday I say something that just helps something click with you. That is my goal being here. So yeah, with that, you guys, thanks again so much for being here with me. We will be here next week, and just keep a lookout for videos on my YouTube channel, and see you in the chat. With that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. Peace.